Happy day, my sweet chickadees. This is Wednesday Words, and we are this week discussing from the book She's Got Issues. We're discussing anger. I'm going to dive right in. Anger is defined in the dictionary as hostile feelings because of opposition or hurt. Now, Nicole in the book defined anger in her teaching as disappointment in life. She also quoted in the book, she quoted Aristotle describing anger and said, anyone can become angry. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person at the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that's not within everyone's power. And that is not easy. While preparing for this teaching, I ran across this guy who talked about 3 different types of anger. I thought it was very interesting. And in fact, I didn't really realize that I had such a problem with anger until I listened to this teaching and realized that I am one of these types. Okay, so there's 3 different types. The first type of anger is called the spewer. And in fact, Nicole mentions this, except she calls it rage. It's on page 185 in the book. And she calls it rage. But this guy calls it the spewer. This is a guy or a person that's in your face. I mean, they're loud. When they're angry, you know it immediately. Their face gets red. It's okay? So they have poor impulse control. They have a very short fuse. You can set them off very easily. And they tend to spew out. That's why they're called a spewer. But then after they're done spewing, they're usually filled with remorse and shame. These kind of people come under the category of spousal abusers. But there's all kinds of people who just spout out, and then once they've released whatever that is that comes up in them, then they're usually filled with shame about how they acted. So that's called a spewer. The second type of anger is called the stuffer. Nicole describes this as resentment. It's on page 187 in the book. These are people who deny or avoid or minimize their issues or their anger. Instead of recognizing it and dealing with it, they deny it. They usually cry a lot as a result of their anger. They won't share why they're crying. They don't want to tell you. They are just silent with it. They stuff it down, thinking that it'll go away that way. They usually give you the silent treatment. These are the people who, when you say, what's wrong? Nothing. And then they stuff it down and think that it will go away that way. Usually in the long run, these kind of people are depressed because you stuff this for so long, and then eventually it causes depression. Then there's a third type of anger. This is the one I identified with. It's called the leaker. In actuality, it is a passive-aggressive form of anger. These are people who use sarcasm or critical remarks to mask their anger. So they may have a smile on their face. Have you ever had someone say really nice words to you, but you can tell from their tone and their body language that they're cutting you down and you can't quite figure it out? You're a little confused because they're being so nice with their face and they're saying seemingly nice words, but you know that they're mad and this is how they're displaying it. These people are usually filled with righteous or basically unrighteous indignation. They harbor bitterness in their heart over supposed wrongs. They think that they've been wronged. When I was listening to the guy talk, the example that he used is something, this is why I recognize myself so clearly in this, is the example that he used was driving. And he said that you'll be driving along, and I've done this. I'll be driving along and someone's tailgating. Someone is on my bumper and I don't like it. And I rise up into looking into the rearview mirror till I'm certain I've made eye contact. And I'm thinking in my head, you're following this closely and I'm doing 60. Let's see what you do at 40. I used to do this all the time driving to Tehachapi. where I would slow way down and they couldn't pass me because it's difficult to pass on the road to Tehachapi. And I had this passive, and I would feel so satisfied because they were wronging me by following too closely, and I was punishing them by driving slower. You follow me too close, watch me brake. Watch me use my brake. Now see, this is a leaker. It comes out a little at a time. It comes out in sarcasm and snarky remarks and criticisms, but criticisms with a smile on your face. So that's where I found myself. I don't know where you find yourself in any of these three categories. Anger in and of itself is not a sin. It's not wrong. Jesus was angry. I have 3 examples of where Jesus became angry. In Mark 3:5, Jesus was visibly angry at the hardness of the heart of the Pharisees. There was a man that needed his hand healed, and Jesus was going to heal him. And the Pharisees were going, "You going to heal on the Sabbath?" And Jesus was visibly angry with them because their hearts were so hard. What's wrong with healing and doing good on the Sabbath? He was questioning them. Then in Matthew 23:18, he got verbally angry at the religious leaders. He was frustrated, and he called them hypocrites. He said, "You are clean and saintly on the outside, and you are greedy and corrupt on the inside." And he got verbal with them, verbally angry. Then in Mark 11, he got physically angry. He was, this is one of the times that he cleared the temple. The merchants were in the temple selling sacrifices, and you couldn't come into the temple without a sacrifice. And so they were making a huge profit on these poor people who were just coming to sacrifice in the temple. They were trying to do what was right. And they had to, sometimes they traveled a long way and couldn't bring a sacrifice with them. So they had to buy what was there. And these people were making a profit on the sacrifice. Plus the fact the Gentiles could only come into the outer courts of the temple. And that's where the merchants were set up. So this Gentiles couldn't even come into the temple at all and worship because all of the merchants were there overselling their stuff. And so Jesus got physically angry. Remember, he said that my Father's house shall be a house of prayer, but you've made it a den of thieves. So he got physically angry. So here he got visibly angry, he got verbally angry, and then he got physically angry. So Jesus showed every example of anger. The difference between Jesus's anger and how we usually react in anger is that he was never petty. He was never selfish, and he was always under control. His words were under control. His actions were under control. He did exactly what he needed to do, and he didn't say things in a wrong manner. It had nothing to do with him personally. It was dealing with a wrong. We can get angry. We just can't be driven by selfish motives. It can't be about us, and it can't cause us to sin. I want you to turn to Ephesians 4. The 4th chapter of Ephesians. I'm going to read the 26th and the 27th verse. Okay? Ephesians 4, 26 and 27. Verse 26. In your anger, do not sin. And in is a great word to describe you're going to get angry. There's going to be times you're going to be angry. It's not if you sin, but it's not if you get angry, but it's in your anger. When you're angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. We're going to discuss these 3 verses. The first part of the verse, it says, in your anger, don't sin. Okay? In your anger, don't sin. Just stay right here. I'm going to turn over to Matthew 12, and I'm going to read verses 34 to 37. You can mark that down. You can read it later, but I'm going to read it to you. Okay? Start in verse 34. And this is Jesus talking. He said, you brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and the evil man brings evil things from the evil stored up in him. But I tell you that men will have to give an account on that day of judgment for every careless word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. This is such a powerful passage of scripture that we need to take to heart. What's inside of us is going to come out. When we are angry, it is going to come out. And if we do not have self-control, what's in our hearts is going to burst out. And if it's evil, it's going to be evil coming out of our words. But then Jesus said, but I will tell you, you're going to have to give an account on Judgment Day for every careless word. We have to be careful when we dress someone down or when we spout off thinking that we are, making our point. These are careless words, and we're going to have to give an account for them. And it says, for by your words you'll be acquitted, and by your words you'll be condemned. Oh, dear Lord, I do not want to be condemned by careless words spoken in anger that I've not asked for forgiveness for. Let's go back to Ephesians. So in our anger, do not sin. And then it says, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. This means don't hold a grudge. You know the saying with your spouse, don't go to bed angry. This just means that don't give it time to fester, okay? Don't hold on to things. Prolonged anger that is not tempered by God becomes vengeance. And in Romans 12:19, God very specifically says, vengeance is whose? Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So God is telling us the vengeance is up to him. But if we're not careful, if we hold our anger, it will become a grudge. And that grudge will become vengeance. And we'll decide we've been wronged long enough and we're going to take action on it. That's when it becomes sin. The anger itself is not sin. It's our selfish reaction to that anger that becomes sin. And then at the last part, it says, because it says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. And then in verse 27, it says, and do not give the devil a foothold. Well, what does the devil have to do with anger? If anger can be used constructively, if God has created an anger in us to get things accomplished, like we studied in the book where the woman whose child was killed by a drunk driver who started Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. And it was used for good. So anger can be used for good. What does the devil have to do with this? Satan can divide us if we nurse our anger, if we keep it and nourish it and say we are justified for it. It can become a tool of Satan. He can get a grip on our hearts where we will stop listening to God. We're only listening to our anger and how to take care of our anger and how to justify it and how to make sure that the person who's made us angry pays. This is where it divides relationships, it divides churches, it divides friends. And when Satan can get a foothold through your anger, he can get a foothold in a group, he can get a foothold in a relationship, and that's what he wants. He wants you to let your anger overwhelm you, and he keeps feeding you with, yeah, that's right, you were not treated fair. That's right, you deserve better. That's right, your anger is justified. This is called righteous indignation. No, most of the time it's called unrighteous indignation. We need to become truly righteously angry about the right things. We need to be righteously angry about injustice in this world. We need to be righteously angry about lives that are broken. And what can we do about it? We need to become righteously angry about people who still don't know Christ. That's what we need to be angry about. So what makes you mad? What stirs up your anger? Is it someone wronged me? Someone hurt my feelings? Someone didn't do what I wanted them to do? Someone didn't act the way they were supposed to act toward me. Me. Is that what makes you mad? Or does injustice make you mad? Or broken lives make you mad? People who are going to hell without Christ, does that stir up anger in you? Does Satan running rampant in this world stir up anger in you and cause you to want to do more for Christ? If what makes you mad is truly righteous, God will use that anger and channel it for good. But if what makes you angry is selfish, it wasn't worth keeping to begin with. Oh God, deal with us about our anger. Deal with us about our careless words. Just deal with us. I love you, my sweet chickadees. And until next time, I remain Cheryl, aka All Round Good Egg.